CEO surprised to hear. Housekeepers speak 9 languages. His next action shocks the whole company. This story tracks Zuri Collins, a night shift custodian, whose hidden mastery of 9 languages erupts into view when CEO Adrian Templeton overhears her guiding 3 visitors in flawless Mandarin, Spanish, and French. The encounter forces Vertex Freight Solutions to confront its own blindness, launches Zuri into an executive role overnight, and ignites a culture war that stretches from broom closet to boardroom. Zuri had spent 5 uneventful years buffing the marble plains of Vertex's lobby, her name stitched in white on navy cloth few people read. At 6:52 a.m., on a jittery April Monday, she was crouched beside the brass directory polishing fingerprints into memory when the building's pulse reached its frantic peak heels, ticking phones, chiming couriers wobbling under pastry boxes. CEO Adrian Templeton strode in rehearsing bullet points for a shareholder call. Halfway to the elevators, a lilting Mandarin phrase sailed past his ear. It wasn't the words that stopped him. It was the flawless native cadence embedded in a place where ni hao usually drew blank stares. His eyes locked on the petite custodian ponytail, tucked beneath a cap, latex-gloved hand, still circling the rail, calmly directing a bewildered Chinese supplier toward the freight elevator. Before Adrian could absorb the rarity, the supplier bowed and left. Zuri pivoted to intercept a delivery driver juggling paper bags. «Puede dejar la comida en recepción. Yo firmo por usted», she offered in effortless Spanish, signing his clipboard. Then, as though finishing a linguistic marathon, she corrected a French vendor's mislabeled customs form with crisp precision. 3 strangers, 3 tongues, 1 mop handle still balanced against her knee. Adrian's pulse jumped equal parts awe and guilt. 25 years expanding Vertex across continents, and the sharpest polyglot on the payroll-scrubbed floors 2 flights down. He crossed the lobby shadow, falling over her bucket. «Excuse me,» he began, voice lower than intended. She straightened, meeting his gaze without flinch eyes, trained to observe while remaining unseen. «That was Mandarin, right?» «Yes, sir,» she replied, tone politely neutral. «And Spanish, then French.» A single nod. «I also handle Portuguese, German, Arabic, Italian, Swahili, and I can read Latin.» 9 languages, he whispered more to himself than her. «Would you have a moment upstairs?» Suspicion flickered habit, born from invisibility, but curiosity pushed her forward. «If my supervisor agrees. Leave him to me.» Adrian flashed his badge. Elevator doors parted. They rode in silence, save the hum of cables and the faint citrus scent clinging to her gloves. Halfway up, she murmured, almost apologetic, «Been here 6 years. Never thought I'd see this floor unless someone spilled coffee.» «Maybe today changes more than scenery,» he said, guilt threading his smile. His office gleamed with glass trophies, world maps, and a skyline view, yet he waved aside the grandeur and gestured to a chair. Zuri sat lightly, as if prepared to be dismissed. «How does one learn 9 languages while working nights?» he asked. She inhaled. «Scholarship kid from Dayton. Majored in linguistics until mom's stroke. Tuition vanished. I took triple shifts. My daughter was 3 bedtime stories turned into vocabulary drills. Portuguese on laundromat benches. Arabic podcasts on the bus. Languages kept the lights on in my head when I couldn't keep them on at home.» Composure cracked only when she mentioned her mother, but steadied at the memory of cramped study sessions. Bills chose the uniform. «I never stopped learning.» «No one ever asked,» Adrian murmured. «No one ever listened,» she corrected gently. The phrase struck like a gavel. Outside, the city glittered with promises he'd built, yet a treasure had polished his floors unseen. He opened a leather notebook, scribbling furious bullets, title, salary band, training, budget plans, forming faster than either could price. Zuri's gaze tracked the pen. «I'm not asking for favors.» «Neither am I,» he replied. «I'm correcting an oversight.» A sharp knock, his assistant reporting chaos. Vertex's São Paulo delegates had arrived early, translator stranded on I-35. Adrian turned to Zuri. «Portuguese sim,» she answered, a spark of amusement lighting her face. Then, Let's solve a crisis, he said, motioning toward the corridor. They walked side by side, custodian and CEO, past startled interns and puzzled managers. Under fluorescent tubes, a chain of assumptions began to snap, one silent link at a time. By the time Zuri and Adrian reached Conference 4B, fluorescent lights hummed like nervous applause behind the frosted glass. Inside waited 4 Brazilian directors, eyes sharp, arms crossed over polished suits, checking their phones with visible irritation. The empty interpreter's chair sat accusingly at the end of the table. Adrian eased the door shut, every executive gaze turning to the janitor at his side. Zuri inhaled, straightened her navy coveralls, and began in confident Portuguese, "Desculpem o atraso. Posso ajudar em tudo que precisarem." Her tone flowed warm and precise, the musical lilt of São Paulo street corners. Startled eyebrows softened. She recapped shipping metrics, apologized for the miscommunication, and slid naturally into the agenda Adrian had planned to defend with spreadsheets. When Director Oliveira cracked a joke about Texan heat melting freight labels, Zuri laughed, volleyed back a quip about São Paulo's traffic, swallowing entire trucks, and the room lit with easy laughter. Adrian understood nothing beyond context, but he watched the alchemy folded arms, opening pens, scribbling notes, nods replacing frowns. In 20 minutes, she untangled a tariff clause that had stalled for 8 weeks, proposing a bilingual template the directors approved on the spot. When negotiations wrapped, Oliveira switched to English and shook Adrian's hand. "Your liaison is exceptional," he said. "Where did you find her?" Adrian's answer felt like confession and triumph at once. "Exactly where she's always been." The moment the Brazilians exited, Zuri's shoulders sagged, adrenaline draining, but her smile held. "I hope that helped," she murmured. "Helped," Adrian echoed, leading her into the corridor. "You just saved a quarter's revenue forecast." They rode the elevator to the service level so she could clock out properly, but halfway down, Adrian paused the car, sealing them in reflective silence. "Tell me something," he said. "What do you want that this job has never given you?" The question hovered like a rescue ladder. Zuri stared at her reflection in the polished doors, safety goggles perched on her head, uniform smeared with honest labor. "A seat where decisions happen," she whispered. "Not for me alone, so my daughter knows ceilings are choices, not architecture." Adrian pressed the button. The car descended. "Then, let's talk again tomorrow, 9 a.m., upstairs." That night, Zuri finished her shift with fingers shaking from more than mop vibrations. At home, she microwaved scalloped potatoes, called her daughter Maya on video. Maya answered from a cramped dorm room, nursing school posters taped beside fairy lights. Zuri told her about the meeting in quick Portuguese and faster English, the words tripping over pride and disbelief. Maya's grin spread wide. "Mom, they saw you." "I'm not sure what they saw," Zuri admitted. "But I'm meeting him again in the morning." "Wear that gray cardigan," Maya advised, "and own the room." "You've owned rooms. None of them could survive." After hanging up, Zuri laid out the cardigan, ironed her best jeans, and stared at her battered language flashcards, edges wilted ink, faded proof that persistence could outlast paper. Yet doubts hissed. Janitors don't sit in boardrooms. She answered the thought aloud, voice steady. "They do if they speak 9 languages, and someone finally listens." Morning came too soon. She arrived on the executive floor at 8:55, heart rattling. Adrian waited by the map wall, 2 mugs of coffee steaming. No assistance, no fanfare. "Before we talk titles," he said, "I owe you an apology for every day this company walked past you." Shock tightened her grip on the mug. "Apology accepted," she managed. He opened a binder labeled Global Cultural Liaison Job Description Salary, triple her current pay, mentorship budget, direct line to his office. "I can't guarantee everyone will applaud," he said, voice even, "but I can guarantee the authority to make them listen." Zuri's pulse roared in her ears. Visions flickered, late bus rides, memorizing verb charts, bleach fumes mingling with Arabic consonants, Maya sleeping across her lap in the library. She flipped to the final page. Her name already printed, waited for a signature. Take the day to think, Adrian offered. I've been thinking for 6 years, she said, pen poised. I'll take the job on 2 conditions. A smile twitched at his mouth. Name them. First, I keep my badge. A reminder. Done. Second, we start a program for staff who've been ignored the way I was. Adrian extended his hand. Let's build it together. When she pressed ink to paper, the clock read 9:17 a.m. 17 minutes into a workday that would divide her life into before and after. As she stepped into the hallway, whispers rippled along the paneled corridor. Some curious, some resentful. Zuri adjusted her gray cardigan, drew a steady breath, and walked toward her new office. Each stride a rejection of every ceiling she'd ever been told to accept. The door to temporary workspace, 12B, an unclaimed cubicle framed by half-height walls, stood ajar when Zuri arrived. A plastic nameplate still read vacant, but the desktop held a new laptop, a phone already blinking with voicemails, and a neat folder stamped International Ops Urgent. She set her old badge beside the keyboard and exhaled. Day 1 had begun. She logged in. Email flooded the screen, subject lines in German-Italian, and fractured English each flagged red. A Slack ping popped up in a public Nauer water cooler channel, a meme of a mop dripping champagne with caption promotion goals. Heat crawled up her neck. She closed the window, opened the folder, and dove into the real work. At 10:12, Victor Hargrove, head of international operations, strode in without knocking. Crisp, tie-clip tone. So, you're the new liaison. He didn't sit. Yes. How can I help? He dropped 3 contracts onto her desk. Italian customs keeps seizing our reefers. Find the clause we keep missing. Clear the backlog by Thursday. He pivoted to leave, but paused, eyes flicking to her coveralls folded on the chair. Nice. Souvenir. Zuri waited until he was gone before letting her shoulders slump. She scanned the first contract, all English, except a tiny footnote in regional Italian legalese. 4 minutes later, she tagged the error Vertex had misdeclared a refrigeration gasket, triggering automatic quarantine. She drafted a corrected bilingual statement, attached it to all pending shipments, and scheduled a call with the Naples port officer. By 11:30, the officer confirmed release of 12 containers. Zuri fired a concise update to Victor, subject line backlog, cleared bill of lading attached. No response. Lunch brought no pause. A junior analyst, named Priya, appeared, eyes wide. Can you proof our German pitch deck? My accent's awful. Zuri toggled to German, coached Priya, through trick pronunciations, trimmed a slide full of idioms that Germans rarely use, and sent her off beaming. Word spread. By mid-afternoon, 2 interns queued at her cubicle for quick language triage. Zuri felt the pace rev up, familiar exhaustion, but electrified by purpose. At 3:04, her phone buzzed with a calendar invite titled Board Preview 16:00. She clicked Location, Glass Conference Room. Attendees Hargrove, plus Templeton, plus Collins. No agenda. She smoothed her cardigan, gathered the Italian docs, and headed upstairs. Through the glass walls, she spotted Victor and Adrian in muted discussion. When she entered, Victor slid a handout across the table. Some directors question this liaison experiment, he said. They'll want proof you're scalable. The word hung like a blade. Adrian's eyes met Zuri's steady. We'll give them results, not reassurance. She inhaled. All right. Adrian nodded for her to begin. She opened with the freed Naples shipment, quantified savings in euros, then pivoted to a forecast of contract error reductions if Vertex adopted her bilingual template across 5 regions. Victor interrupted. Once our legal team hasn't vetted that wording, but she answered in clear, legal Italian, citing EU tariff code verbatim. Adrian smiled into his coffee. Victor fell silent. When she finished, Adrian leaned forward. Anything else for Zuri before we loop in the board? Victor flipped his pen, shook his head. Meeting adjourned. In the hallway, Adrian murmured, solid start. She allowed herself a small grin. 1 day down. He added, ignore the noise. Competence drowns it eventually. But the noise wasn't done. At 5:17, an anonymous email hit her inbox. Ceilings exist for a reason. No signature, only a pixelated image of a wet floor sign. Zuri stared, pulse quickening, then dragged the message into a folder labeled Fuel. She would not let cowardly pixels define her. She rode the elevator to the ground floor, paused in the dim service corridor, where bleach still lingered. Her replacement, a lanky teenager in new overalls, pushed a cart past and nodded shyly. Zuri lifted her old badge, clipped it to the cart's edge, and whispered, "You're next." Outside, dusk painted the skyline. She called Maya. "The deck's stacked," she said, "but I'm shuffling it." Maya laughed through speaker static. "Mom, you've been stacking decks your whole life. The world's just noticing." Zuri hung up, squared her shoulders, and walked toward the train station. Tomorrow, she would face the board, the memes, the emails. But tonight, she soaked in the rare warmth of being exactly where her voice could finally echo, far beyond marble floors. The next morning, that warm certainty tried to slip away in the chill outside Vertex Tower, but Zuri wouldn't let it. She repeated Maya's words. "You've been stacking decks your whole life," as she rode the elevator to the 17th floor boardroom, where ceilings were hammered from ego and precedent. When the doors parted, she saw them all, 11 directors in charcoal suits, thin smiles fixed like decals. A leather folder waited at her seat, and of course, Victor Hargrove beside the projection screen laser pointer, already poised. Adrian greeted her with a nod that said steady. Zuri answered with one that said, "Watch me." Victor opened with a brisk agenda: Naples recovery numbers, commendable upcoming Morocco tender chronic Frankfurt delays. "Before we proceed," he said, turning the pointer on her, "our new liaison will demonstrate how she intends to prevent further customs errors." It sounded like an invitation, but tasted of setup. The screen filled with an incident log, 52 line items, all since she had signed yesterday's contract. Heads swiveled, whispered brows arched. Already failing, Zuri's heart stumbled, then sprinted. She stepped beside Victor, asked him in low German to hand her the clicker. He blinked, passed it over. She zoomed the log to reveal timestamps, every entry dated months before her promotion. "These are legacy errors," she said evenly. "Today, I will show the board how we erase their cost." She toggled to a live dashboard she'd coded overnight, color-coding risks, mapping responsible divisions, overlaying a bilingual template that neutralized 80% of discrepancies. Adrian's brows lifted. A hum of interest rolled the length of the table. Zuri finished by switching to flawless Moroccan Arabic, quoting a customs officer who had approved Vertex's revised paperwork at dawn. Translating herself, she concluded, "They cleared our cargo this morning. Estimated savings $1.2 million. Silence. Then the chairwoman, Sylvia Grant, tapped her pen twice. "Impressive." She eyed Victor, and within 24 hours. Victor's jaw flexed. Zuri felt a fractional victory, but kept her face still. Questions flew: scalability, audit trail, training cost. She answered each in the language of the region, cited Italian, German, then swift Spanish before shifting to English, so the stenographer could keep up. Adrian barely spoke. He watched, letting competence drown out doubt, just as he'd promised. When the chairwoman called a recessed directors, clustered by the window, Victor approached, voice tight. "Creative pivot. He meant I didn't expect you to dodge that trap." She returned a polite smile. "Mistakes speak every language too. We just have to listen." In the corridor, Adrian clasped her elbow. "You rewrote the playbook in an hour." She shrugged. "Insomnia has merits." He laughed, pride glowing behind fatigue. "Come by my office after lunch. We'll greenlight your training proposal." Across the afternoon, Zuri's desk became triage central. An HR manager sought advice on a bilingual ethics memo. Warehouse staff asked about German pallet labels via video chat. Between calls, she drafted the charter for Voice Inside evening language labs, mentorship pairings, a stipend for GED studies. She included a line Maya had texted her: "Ceilings are choices, not architecture." At 4 p.m., An intern jogged over breathless. "You have to see this." He opened Twitter on her monitor. A photo of her standing before the boardroom screen trended under Wenxi Moptomic. Comments split: admiration, curiosity, cynicism. Affirmative action stunt one wrote, "Another." Finally, someone who speaks our client's language literally. Zuri's pulse steadied. Visibility was double-edged. She would wield it like a blade. She reached for her phone, snapped a picture of the trending tag, and sent it to Maya. Stage just got bigger. Maya replied with a gif of fireworks. Before leaving, Zuri tucked her gray cardigan into a drawer and hung a new blazer on the chair. Tomorrow, she would not need armor. She would need stamina. The boardroom ceiling hadn't fallen, but she'd drilled holes large enough for others to see sky. As lights dimmed across the floor, she walked toward the elevator, thinking of the teenager pushing her old badge on a cart 3 stories below. She pressed the button, determined that when Voice Inside launched the first welcome packet would have his name on it, and an open door no one could pretend they hadn't noticed. That night, as elevator cables whisked Zuri toward the ground floor, she pictured the janitor teen's face. When a Voice Inside packet, bearing his name, landed in his locker, proof that the open door was real, not rumor. The vision steadied her. By dawn, she was back in 12B blazer, on drafting lesson schedules and mentor pairings before most executives had checked their phones. At 8:15, Adrian forwarded final approval with the one-word subject: launch. A second later, he messaged again: brace. Buzz is loud. The buzz arrived in tsunamis. HR blasted a sign-up form to every departmental bulletin. Inboxes lit up. In the first hour, 67 employees registered: warehouse pickers, cafeteria servers, receptionists. Even a sleep-deprived software engineer who wrote fluent in C++ need help with Spanish. Zuri grinned until a Slack ping nudged out. A private message from an unknown handle read, "Glass ceilings, stay clean if you don't swing mops at them." She screenshotted and archived it with the others' fuel. Mid-morning, she hosted the inaugural orientation in an unused training room. Folding chairs overflowed. She opened not with credentials, but with a question. Who here has ever been told they were overqualified and underexperienced in the same breath? Hands shot up, laughter edged with bruises. She laid out the curriculum, emphasized peer teaching, and vowed that completion certificates would carry Adrian's signature. When the teen custodian Jamal whispered shyly from the back row, "Does this count toward college credit someday?" Zuri answered, "It counts toward leverage. Use it where you choose," and watched his posture straighten. Word spread beyond Vertex walls. Local news requested an interview. Adrian suggested delaying, but Zuri insisted on owning the narrative. A camera crew arrived at noon, filming her walking the warehouse floor beside Jamal, translating a Spanish safety briefing for loaders. The segment aired that evening. Twitter's Moptomic morphed into Voice Inside. Applications doubled overnight. Not everyone cheered. The following morning, an anonymous memo circulated, claiming training funds diverted from bonuses. Some managers printed it, posting near elevators. Zuri confronted Victor, who shrugged. "Optics Collins. People like their ladders predictable." She replied, "Predictability built this mess," and returned to work. By week's end, Voice Inside held its first evening class. Zuri taught beginner German alongside Priya, who'd once feared her own accent. Jamal practiced introductions with a security guard who dreamed of immigration law. Laughter echoed off whiteboards never used past 5 p.m. At 9:02, Zuri locked up, heart thudding with the thrill of motion finally matching potential. She didn't see the sabotage until morning. Her cubicle monitor displayed a looping GIF, a mop slipping on a puddle caption, "Careful, promotion floors are wet." Simultaneously, her corporate email was blocked for suspicious activity. She headed straight to IT. Lines of code scrolled past. A technician confirmed her credentials had been flagged by an internal request originating from International Ops, Victor's domain. Adrian authorized an override within minutes, but the damage, lost access during a live contract negotiation with Jakarta, was enough to stoke whisper fires. Adrian called her to his office. They're digging trenches, he warned. Ready for war. She met his gaze. Wars are loud. Let's be louder with results. Together, they hammered out a rapid response protocol, mirrored accounts, dual language backups, a rotating volunteer squad from Voice Inside to monitor translation bottlenecks. Within 48 hours, Jakarta's shipment cleared earlier than forecast. Finance sent a congratulatory graph. Victor sent silence. Friday afternoon, the board convened an emergency video session, ostensibly to review Jakarta gains, actually to probe the unrest. Sylvia Grant prompted Ms. Collins' morale reports show division. How do you intend to unify voices without alienating long-standing staff? Zuri answered simply, by measuring value in contribution, not resume fonts. If we teach empathy in every language, morale won't need translation. She presented enrollment heat maps and early metrics error rates down 9% shipment, speed up 6 retention inquiries from roles that typically churn monthly. The chairwoman nodded, then addressed the grid of directors. Numbers speak. Let them finish the sentence. Meeting adjourned. That evening, Zuri found a handwritten envelope on her desk. Expecting more venom, she unfolded a note. I filed the anonymous memo. I believed the rumors. After tonight's class, I deleted the flyer and signed up for intermediate French. Thank you for proving me wrong. No signature, just a tear-stained corner. She sank into her chair, exhaustion and affirmation crashing together. Outside the window, the skyline's neon reflected off the glass ceiling lights above city lights, beyond both visible, both breakable. Zuri pictured Jamal practicing his umlauts, pictured skeptics rewriting doubt into curiosity, pictured the mop gif, looping unseen in some forgotten inbox. She powered down her system, took the note, and headed for the elevator. One more link in the chain had snapped, and the echo felt like music. Zuri cradled the unsigned note in her palm, all the way down to the lobby, feeling its fragile paper pulse louder than the elevator cables. Outside, warm wind tugged at her blazer and carried the faint chorus of downtown traffic, a reminder that change, like any good storm, never happened in silence. She slipped the note into her pocket and promised herself it would be the first artifact pinned to the future Voice Inside wall of victories. Saturday dawned to still buzzing phones. Voice Inside was trending third in the city. Local radio replayed a 30-second clip of Zuri translating safety instructions for warehouse staff, framing it as the new bilingual blueprint for blue-collar America. Maya texted a screenshot, "Mom, you beat the mayor's pothole rant." Zuri snorted over black coffee and returned to lesson planning. The next module, Basic Spanish for Shipping Clerks, would launch Monday, but enrollment had already doubled. She typed until sun climbed high, then headed to a rented co-working studio where volunteer mentors sorted flashcards and brewed determination like espresso. At noon, Adrian called with unexpected news. Keynote slot opened at the National Logistics Summit in Cincinnati 3 days from now. They want Voice Inside. Can you do it? Zuri's pulse hammered. Public speaking beyond local news meant stepping onto a stage bright enough to scorch mistakes into memory. She glanced at the apology note, then at the lesson plan stack, bound by rubber bands. I'll need to rearrange classes and find childcare for half the sign-up, she said. But yes, I'll do it. By Monday, doubters doubled their volume. Another anonymous flyer surfaced, warning that pet projects were diverting overtime funds. HR traced the print job to a copier near International Ops, but no name stuck. Zuri responded with numbers, a morning email to all staff, outlining Week 1 metrics, reduced error rates, preliminary savings, and quotes from line workers, identifying newfound confidence. She concluded with, "The funds we divert are from waste, not wages." That sentence ricocheted through internal channels, shared more than any memo Adrian had authored in years. On Tuesday afternoon, she boarded a regional jet with Adrian and Priya, who would demo the German pitch deck that originally terrified her. In flight, Priya tapped her laptop nervously, murmuring cases under her breath. Zuri shifted into calm German, guiding Priya through tongue placement from guttural ch to soft itch. Adrian watched equal parts proud and awed. "Remember when we thought engagement meant ping-pong tables," he joked. Zuri replied, "Turns out people prefer believing their voice matters." Cincinnati greeted them with drizzly skies and a cavernous expo hall thrumming with forklift displays and pallet-tracking drones. Backstage, Zuri paced geometric patterns on the carpet, mouthing her opening lines. Adrian's phone buzzed a message from Sylvia Grant stakeholders watching. "Deliver clarity, not costumes." Zuri read it over his shoulder and grinned. "Let's give them a clear view then." Spotlight snapped on. Adrian introduced her in one crisp sentence. "Please welcome the woman redefining internal supply chains, Zuri Collins." She stepped to the lectern, heartbeat, drumming in triple time, but voice steady. She began, not with statistics, but with a question echoed from orientation. Who here has ever been told they were both overqualified and underexperienced? Several hands rose among suits and safety vests alike. A chuckle rippled. She told her story in brief strokes: MOP midnight study sessions, the Chinese supplier who sparked discovery. Then she pivoted to data dashboards, of savings heat maps, of error reduction testimonials from Jamal, and clerks who had once feared email attachments in English. For her finale, she switched languages every 2 sentences. Italian greeting, German metric, Portuguese proverb, Arabic bridge ending in English talent. Doesn't need translation. Opportunity does. The hall fell into still silence, then erupted in applause that felt like thunder rolling upstream. Cameras flashed. The conference Twitter feed exploded. Backstage, Priya hugged her so hard their earpieces tangled. They flew home under starlight. At Fort Worth Airport security, Zuri switched on her phone dozens of messages. The first was from Victor Terse, but undeniable congratulations on the summit. "We should discuss scaling your template." She allowed herself a long breath. Another note awaited from an unknown number. "I started intermediate French tonight. Ceilings feel lower already. Merci." She saved it beside the first apology, a growing collection of proof. The next morning, Vertex's lobby televisions looped a news segment titled "From Janitor to Industry Game Changer." Zuri walked past without stopping, but employees nudged each other, whispering not with skepticism now, but something closer to pride. Jamal intercepted her near the elevators, brandishing a freshly laminated badge. "Got approved for early release from night shift to attend class," he said, grin unstoppable. Management called it professional development. Zuri high-fived him, stepping into the lift as doors slid shut. Upstairs, her inbox overflowed with external partnership requests. Community colleges seeking credit alignment, a warehouse chain in Chicago begging to license Voice Inside. Yet amid the excitement, a single calendar alert grabbed her focus: emergency ops review, requested by Sylvia Grant, 4 p.m. The subject line beneath read, "Budget Realignment Proposal." Zuri understood victories invited bigger battles. She straightened her blazer and opened the meeting deck, readying slides that turned outcomes into armor. Because storms never quiet after one success. They gather new clouds. And she intended to meet every one standing tall beneath a sky she could finally see. Zuri arrived at the 4 o'clock review, armed with those slides' outcomes as armor and the calm of someone who had already crossed the worst border in visibility to relevance. Sylvia Grant sat at the head of the walnut table, silver tablet glowing. Victor lingered 2 seats away, expression unreadable. The agenda's first line blazed, "Budget Realignment Voice Inside Initiative." Before Sylvia could launch her critique, Zuri projected a real-time dashboard error rate drop, now 12% Jakarta turnaround shaving, 3 days off delivery cycles, cost savings cresting $2.1 million numbers verified by finance at noon. She followed with a bar chart of retention spikes among night shift roles, then a short clip of Jamal giving safety instructions in Spanish. Silence spread like ink. Sylvia laced her fingers. Impressive, but expansion funds mean reallocating from R&D. Stakeholders will ask why language labs outweigh prototype drones. Zuri answered evenly. Because a drone can't fix a customs form or negotiate a tariff in the wrong dialect. Our prototypes crash into human error. We're removing that wall. She advanced to her final slide, a break-even curve reaching 0 in 6 months, then soaring into profit. Voice. Inside is not charity. It's infrastructure you've never measured. Victor cleared his throat. We projected gains, not morale costs. Zuri met his eyes. Morale costs disappear when people feel seen. You want predictability. Teach empathy. It's cheaper than turnover. Sylvia tapped her tablet twice, scanning the live metrics again. At last she spoke. Recommend we pilot nationwide Dallas next quarter. She looked to Adrian for confirmation. He nodded once, smile small, but fierce. Motion carried. Afterward, in the hallway, Victor caught Zuri's sleeve. Those metrics, where did you source the retention forecast? From the people you never studied, she said. Try listening. He let go, lips pursed, respect, seeping in where resistance lived. The next morning, an email hit every inbox. Vertex expands voice. Inside Program Founding Director, Zuri Collins. The subject line sparked a shower of reply all confetti emojis. Jamal forwarded it to his mother. Priya printed and pinned it outside the cafeteria. By noon, maintenance had unscrewed the plaque above Training Room A. Facilities installed a brushed steel replacement Collins Hall. There was no ceremony, only a quiet ripple of workers passing by fingertips, grazing Zuri's name, as if to prove it was real. Later, Zuri slipped downstairs to the service corridor. Bleach fumes greeted her like an old friend. She found the supply closet door ajar. The teen she'd once been was gone, replaced by Jamal reorganizing microfiber cloths for tomorrow's shift. He glanced up, grin wide. They put your name on a room. She held out a laminated badge, voice inside mentor, and clipped it to his shirt. The room is just drywall, she said. You're the door. That evening, she returned to her office and opened the drawer that held her folded coveralls and the stack of anonymous notes. Venom turned to fuel, turned to ashes of doubt. She added the latest apology, smoothed the edges, and closed the drawer gently. Her phone buzzed with a fresh text from Maya. Headline says you're breaking ceilings with multilingual hammers. Zuri replied, ceilings are choices. She paused, watching the cursor blink, then added, and choices are contagious. Night settled over the skyline. In offices where late lights once meant endless quotas, people leaned over desks, practicing borrowed phrases, laughing at rolled R's and stubborn umlauts. Somewhere a printer rattled out new welcome packets. Somewhere a senior manager rewrote a memo in 2 languages, because a janitor turned director had proven clarity matters more than pride. Zuri stepped to the window, the city's glow reflecting in the glass, a translation of possibility in living light. She thought of every mop stroke that had once felt like erasure, and realized it had actually been practice building the cadence, patience, and muscle for this exact moment. Tomorrow the buzz would grow again. Budgets would tighten. Someone would craft a fresh meme. Storms, after all, regenerate. But the sky above Collins Hall now held permanent cracks, wide enough for any voice to rise through. And Zuri intended to keep widening them, one class, one contract, one shared language at a time, until no one in the building could claim they hadn't heard brilliance when it spoke.